We are investigating the unsettling disappearance of Sierra Breland, a woman whose life seemingly evaporated into the unknown. The 31-year-old attorney hasn't been spotted since 7:17 p.m. on February 24, 2022, when cameras caught her outside her mother-in-law's Johns Creek residence. Ken and investigators have relentlessly pursued every shadow to uncover where she vanished. Sierra Breland was a driven Cleveland, Georgia native whose fierce independence was fueled by a need for respect. Mirroring her mother's career in the legal field, she set her sights on the bar. Though Georgia raised her, the bright lights of Atlanta were always her ultimate destination. Her mother, Kelly, noted that while Georgia was home, Sierra's ambitions required a temporary departure. After her undergraduate years, she moved from the University of Tennessee to Florida State University to earn her law degree. She carved out a niche in insurance defense, characterized by her mother as a woman who never quit. Kelly recalled a vibrant, affectionate daughter who lived for her work. She met Xavier on Tinder in October 2020, rushing into a marriage just 6 months later. By then, she was already carrying their first child. Legal filings suggest Sierra was more than a wife, navigating Xavier's litigation with his ex. The newlyweds soon traded their old lives for a fresh start in Carmel, Indiana. By late 2021, she had a firm job and a son named Jackson, masking a crumbling reality. Yet, the facade of a perfect union began to crack almost immediately. Her cousin, Shelby Campbell, recalls the tension mounting just weeks after their first encounter. When Sierra tried to sever ties, Xavier's fixation turned into a terrifying obsession with being her husband. He started haunting her doorstep, an uninvited shadow waiting in the hallway. Spotting her with another man triggered threats, forcing Sierra to mention the authorities. Half a year later, she gave him a second chance, a choice sealed with a wedding ring. They were inseparable confidants, but Sierra eventually confessed a chilling truth. She feared her husband. Her digital trail revealed her despair, admitting she was drowning in the situation. She was caught in a trap, loving the man while dreading the home they built. The escalating hostility left her questioning if there was even a future left to salvage. His initial apologies had withered away, replaced by a cold, remorseless indifference. He mastered the art of gaslighting, insisting his outbursts were merely reactions to her behavior. Sierra left a haunting warning, telling Shelby that if she died, the culprit was already inside. Survival required strategy. She knew any escape had to be executed with surgical precision. These private exchanges paint a portrait of a woman living in a state of high alert. Shelby insists those messages were just the tip of a much more violent iceberg. The paper trail of distress calls stretched from Georgia to Indiana as she sought police intervention. Campbell noted that by the time sirens arrived, Sierra's survival instinct was to play the dutiful wife. Following one such domestic disturbance, a detective warned her mother that Sierra was masking her fear during those emergency calls. The officer's intuition was grim. Meanwhile, Sierra was quietly funding a secret escape hatch. She was mentally checking out, $1 at a time. A final text laid it bare. She still loved him, but staying was a price she couldn't pay. Kelly and Nick Lair watched from the sidelines, sensing their daughter's world was collapsing. They offered her a sanctuary, reminding her that the door back home was always unlocked. The fateful 11-hour trek to Georgia began with a white Volkswagen Tiguan, a dog, and a baby. She reached her parents' doorstep on February 19th, her first visit since moving north. What appeared to be a routine family reunion was actually something far more desperate. Sierra's mother lived in Georgia, leading her to decide that returning to Indiana was no longer a viable option. Xavier accompanied her on the trip, oblivious to the fact that Sierra had no intention of ever returning home. She maintained a cover story for her mother, claiming the move to Georgia was strictly to find employment. She confessed to her parents that her marriage had turned toxic, prompting her to escape her husband and seek divorce. On Saturday, February 19th, Sierra reached Nick and Kelly's home in Cleveland, Georgia, remaining with them until Sunday morning. This long-awaited reunion was marked by a heavy admission. She refused to return to Indiana and intended to end her marriage. On Sunday, February 20th, Sierra departed from her parents' residence to retrieve her young son, Jackson, from his grandmother's house in Johns Creek, Georgia, which was located roughly a 60-minute drive away. Shelby Campbell recounted the final text message from her cousin, which explained she was at Xavier's mother's house, waiting to retrieve Jackson because he was refusing to hand the boy over. At 11:17 p.m. on Monday, February 21st, Sierra sent a brief text message to her father, Nick. She asked if returning the next morning was acceptable. Nick reassured her that she never needed to ask for permission. Nick called Sierra again the following day after hearing nothing from her. She answered and assured him that everything was fine. She mentioned feeling ill, but when Nick followed up on Wednesday to check her status, his inquiries were met with silence. He sent another message on Thursday, February 24th, but his daughter failed to provide any form of response. By Friday, the Lair family felt a growing sense of dread as Sierra remained completely unreachable for some time. On February 26th, an unfamiliar Indiana area code suddenly appeared on Nick's phone screen during the day. Assuming they were still local, Nick answered calmly, only to be informed by the police that his daughter had officially vanished. Authorities stated her husband filed a report, claiming her sudden lack of communication was entirely out of character for her. The relatives were paralyzed. They believed she was in Georgia, leaving Shelby Campbell questioning why Xavier never called them to verify her safety. He kept the family in the dark. Once Carmel investigators arrived, Nick attempted to call his daughter's personal phone himself. Xavier answered the call instead, leading to a brief, tense exchange between Nick and his missing daughter's husband. Nick demanded the truth from Xavier, pressing him for a real explanation regarding what was actually happening. He reminded Xavier of Sierra's previous warnings. Xavier responded with a curse and severed the connection immediately. Nick then contacted Xavier's father in Carmel, who claimed he had never seen her at the property. A formal press release from the Carmel Police Department on March 2nd confirmed that Xavier Breland reported Sierra missing on February 26, 2022. As the inquiry deepened, investigators recovered surveillance from February 24th at 7:17 p.m., placing Sierra at her mother-in-law's home in Georgia. According to the Carmel police, the footage revealed nothing out of the ordinary regarding her behavior or physical state. Claims surfaced that Sierra left her Brookstone Park home in Carmel shortly after 1 p.m. on February 25th for a walk. She was reportedly wearing only a black top and shorts, despite the frigid 20-degree weather during that evening. Sierra never arrived at the store, and no security cameras captured her presence at the location. Furthermore, her identification was found abandoned, along with her credit cards, 2 phones, and her 5-month-old son, an immediate and terrifying red flag for investigators. Her family noted she kept a secondary phone for emergencies, yet no physical proof exists that she ever returned to Indiana. Abandoning her family was unthinkable, especially given her explicit desire to remain in Georgia permanently. The abandonment of her 5-month-old infant struck investigators as a particularly chilling and highly unusual anomaly. For her mother, the entire narrative defied any logic. Kelly Lair revealed a history of financial strain and claims of physical coercion used by Xavier to maintain control over Sierra. The moment police mentioned the baby was left behind, Sierra's parents felt certain that their daughter was no longer alive. "She's gone," her husband whispered, when the police called to report the missing person filing made by Xavier. The officer confirmed the most damning detail: Sierra had supposedly vanished without her infant child. Sierra was a mother who wouldn't even step away for a shower. Her entire existence revolved around her child's care. Kelly recalled Sierra losing sleep every few hours just to monitor a minor skin rash on her son. Hearing the official story, Kelly's husband was adamant. His daughter would never, under any circumstances, leave her baby. To Kelly, the news of Sierra's absence without her infant led to a single, devastating realization: her daughter was dead. Convinced Sierra would never abandon her baby, Kelly watched as 2 days after Xavier's February 28th report, investigators arrived at his doorstep. Legal records describe an accidental weapon discharge occurring at a residence located on Baldwin Lane. According to Xavier, a sudden crack of gunfire interrupted him while shifting a Christmas tree inside the garage. He claimed to have recovered the firearm from a shed to unload it, eventually initiating the police contact himself. A subsequent search of the premises revealed 2 separate handguns tucked away inside. Authorities remained tight-lipped regarding direct links to the disappearance, yet Xavier's checkered past quickly surfaced. Official archives confirmed a felony theft conviction dating back to 2005. Investigators grew suspicious of the 24-hour delay in reporting her missing after a routine shopping trip. Days into the official search for the missing woman, Xavier became a person of interest regarding Sierra's whereabouts, leading to an arrest on an incidental warrant. Law enforcement uncovered an outstanding warrant for aggravated stalking out of Quah County. Extradited to Georgia, he faced allegations of hiding a GPS tracker inside a child's plush toy to monitor an ex-partner. This specific legal battle stemmed from a bitter conflict over parental rights. 14 days later, a Friday search party comprised of officers and kin assembled. They combed through the various residential sectors within the Johns Creek area. Detection efforts centered on two specific corridors along Medlock Bridge Road, Sierra's last suspected route. Beyond handbills, electronic alerts were deployed along Carmel Bridge Road, pleading for any witness information. Her face flickered across digital billboards citywide as authorities flooded the Atlanta metro with her details. Public assistance was requested to find a white 2017 Volkswagen Tiguan, plate 5869 Renman. The SUV featured a distinct license plate frame referencing Florida State's law program. Crime lab technicians meticulously processed the vehicle for any trace evidence. This scrutiny followed reports, placing her last known location at her mother-in-law's Georgia residence. Detectives suspected a pivotal, perhaps violent, event transpired at that house before she vanished. While Xavier's return journey to Indiana was mapped, Sierra's presence in the car remained unverified. Surveillance footage from various stops only ever showed Xavier stepping out of the white Volkswagen. Whether Xavier's mother assisted the investigation remains a tightly guarded secret by officials. Nevertheless, multiple search warrants were executed to seize physical evidence from several homes. Forensic teams and recovery canines scoured the area, hunting for biological stains or human remains. They sought any sign of a physical altercation that could explain the couple's final moments together. Despite the use of specialized dogs, the residential searches failed to produce a viable scent path. With the case still active, the specifics of what was recovered stay shielded from public view. A recorded conversation from Xavier's March 2022 incarceration eventually came to light. On tape, he informs his children that an unknown captor had taken Sierra away forever. This claim stood in stark contradiction to the earlier narrative he provided to Carmel detectives. He whispered to his child that someone had taken his wife, ominously noting the gravity of adult abduction. "She isn't returning," he concluded with chilling finality. By mid-March, Xavier was moved to a Georgia facility to answer for the stalking allegations. These specific legal troubles were separate from the investigation into Sierra's disappearance. He had allegedly stalked the mother of his child using GPS, violating an active protection order. Despite an acquittal in August, he was immediately detained again and sent back to Indiana. The new charges centered on a violent felon's illegal possession of a firearm. During the proceedings, Breland begged for a bond reduction to allow his mother to post bail. Though the state sought $50,000, the judge lowered the amount to $35,000. Claiming a need to rebuild his life, he suggested a career in trucking awaited his release. Following a judicial review, the court fixed the bail amount at $100,000. February 2023 saw Xavier Breland regain his freedom upon securing that bond. That release triggered a chilling sequence of events. Despite relentless interrogation regarding his wife's vanishing, he maintained a wall of silence. His narrative never wavered. She simply walked to the market and never came home. Investigators have mapped out a sprawling grid of potential sites where evidence might still linger. Georgia holds 85,000 acres of parkland, while federal agencies manage 2 million more, alongside 300,000 acres of raw wilderness. Within Fulton County, 440 acres of dense greenery offer a daunting search radius. Vast networks of transit corridors and utility easements stretch across the landscape, creating countless forgotten pockets of land. Thick foliage blankets nearly 1/5 of Georgia's massive terrain, totaling over 37 million acres of potential hiding places. The search perimeter extends far beyond state lines, excluding Tennessee, Kentucky, and Indiana from that specific count. This is despite the couple's documented path through those regions, according to Lieutenant Gregory Todd Hood of the Johns Creek Police. Hood noted that lacking a definitive final location prevents the department from narrowing their tactical focus. Kelly LeChair confirmed that authorities have amassed a multi-state collection of physical clues and witness testimony. These remain isolated shards of a broken narrative, with the central truth still eluding the investigative team. Civil litigation between Xavier's mother and sister surfaced court filings detailing the seizure of property from the family residence. Forensic units extracted samples from a mattress and carpeting on April 21, 2022, searching for microscopic traces. These disturbing details were unearthed within the paperwork of the ongoing internal family feud. 5-month-old Jackson entered the foster system following Xavier's March 1 arrest, leaving Nick and Kelly LeChair to fight for him. Sierra's grieving parents have finally secured visitation and are working to relocate the infant to Georgia. The passing year has seen a succession of coordinated efforts to scour the landscape for the missing mother. Even with high-resolution focus on key sites, the mystery of Sierra's fate remains cold and impenetrable. While the investigative machinery grinds on behind closed doors, the public face of the search remains active. Digital billboards and flyers broadcast the profile of a woman 5 feet tall, weighing 120 pounds with brown hair. Distinguishing marks include a trio of tiny trees on her finger and a directional arrow inked on her left wrist. A sunburst design is also etched into the skin over her left rib cage. They traveled in a white 2017 Volkswagen Tiguan, bearing the Georgia plate 5869 Romani. The vehicle features a Florida State University law school frame. Police urge anyone with February sightings to step forward. Xavier stands as the sole person of interest in the public record, despite the absence of formal charges. Detectives are convinced he holds the key to the case, believing only his testimony can bring Sierra a final resting place. Her mother, Kelly, maintains that the answers lie somewhere within a 4-state radius. She fears Sierra's remains could be hidden anywhere from Georgia to Tennessee, Kentucky, or Indiana. Sportsmen in these regions are the new eyes of the law. Meanwhile, the Lachers have officially won custody of Jackson. As noted, Xavier walked free on bail for a separate offense involving the unlawful carry of a weapon. The legal calendar set his court date for December 28, 2023. When his name was called, the chair was empty. Xavier Breland had vanished into the shadows. A fresh warrant has been issued, triggering a high-priority manhunt to track the fugitive down. This complicates an already dark investigation. Xavier is a black male, standing 6 feet tall with striking green eyes. He carries a lean frame of roughly 160 pounds. Federal agents have joined the hunt for Sierra, though the Earth refuses to give up its secrets. With Xavier now a fugitive, the psychological weight of the case grows. Kelly Lacher remains vocal in her suspicion. She insists her daughter lived in fear, desperate to avoid a forced return to Indiana by his side. The disappearance of both husband and wife has accelerated the investigation into a race against time. Following repeated judicial delays, the police and the Lacher family are pleading for any scrap of information. They need to find both subjects to finally piece together the final, fatal moments of their shared timeline. If this mystery gripped you, support the channel by subscribing for nightly investigative deep dives. Remain observant and stay safe. Behind the polished facade of a perfect life, a chilling reality often hides in the shadows. Sierra Breland wasn't just a driven attorney. She was a woman navigating a minefield of obsession disguised as love. Her story serves as a haunting siren. Domestic violence doesn't always look like a bruise. Sometimes, it's a GPS tracker hidden in a child's toy, a surgical plan to escape, or a text message sent in the dead of night admitting a bone-deep fear. We must learn to hear the words that aren't being said. When someone whispers, "If I die," the culprit is already inside. Believe them the first time. Sierra's fierce love for her son was her North Star, yet even that couldn't protect her from a predator in her own hallway. This is a call to action. Shatter the silence of suburbia. Look closer at the perfect unions. Trust the intuition that tells you a facade is cracking. We owe it to the Sierras of the world to be the sanctuary they are too afraid to ask for. Don't wait for the silence to become permanent. Speak up, reach out, and believe the victims before they become a tragic headline. The cost of looking away is a price no family should ever have to pay.